those requirements documents going? We're good? All right. So questions about any of the stuff you're working on, anything you want to talk about, your specific projects, I can push you in the right direction. Because the hope is that we have all the requirements documents in before class starts on Thursday, right? And then I'm going to attempt to get them all graded Thursday afternoon before my 6 p.m. class. So between 3 p.m. or something like that and 6 p.m., I'm going to get them all graded. That way you have as much time as possible to work on your specifications. Go ahead.
One of the requirements, like if necessary, be like gathering stuff you might need, whether it's like software, physical like stuff.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that realistically, that's probably going to be more in the specifications document of how you're going to accomplish something, because you're going to say in requirements, here's all the things that need to happen. Okay, specifications is going to say this is the way I'm going to accomplish this guy is gather, download this software package, do this, that, the next thing. If you need some specific hardware and you think it's a project you're either working on with me or with a client or something like that, you probably want to figure out what it's going to take to get that hardware as soon as possible, whether that's something you're paying for, whether that's something the department's paying for, whether that's something I'm paying for, whatever it is. Get that stuff figured out as soon as possible so that things can get ordered so they're here as soon as possible. You can start working with them. Make sense? So I know some of you who are working with me have already talked to me about that kind of stuff. And if there's hardware that you need, I've kind of said one way or another, what I'll probably do for those people is I'll probably just order it and then I'll try to get reimbursed by the department. But if I don't, I don't. But I want to see those projects happen anyways. But don't wait until halfway through the semester to start thinking about those things, because you want to get those in, tested, make sure there's not a defect or something like that as soon as possible, because the worst thing could happen is you get to the end of the semester, you're finally ready to start putting things together and either a part didn't get ordered or it's defective or whatever. So you want to make sure all the pieces you're going to need are in hand or on order as soon as possible. All right, what else? Go ahead.
How long does the requirements document have to be?
Long enough. Yeah, so there isn't a specific length, there isn't a specific format. Just the purpose of the requirements document is to unambiguously describe in a lot of detail what you will be accomplishing. So that in the end, when I have your project sitting in front of me, I can go down and use the requirements document as a checklist. Beyond that, the requirements document is also going to, at least at the high level, defend your total number of hours of work, of productivity work. All right, so if you can accomplish that in 2 pages, fine. If it takes you 20 pages, fine. More pages doesn't mean a better document. So I'm not looking for fluff, because fluff isn't necessarily a productivity unit. So fluff is going to be just as hard for you to work with for being productive in your assignment as it's going to be for me to sit there and try to decide what was fluff and what is real stuff in the document. So the document has a purpose to it, not necessarily a length. There's something over here. Go ahead.
So with this first requirements document that we're handing into, you're a little more so looking for it's reasonable more than exact, right? Like you'll make changes to it most likely.
More than likely, your requirements document is going to change some. It'll probably change relatively soon though, because after I look at it, like I said, I've been doing this for a while, so it's going to be pretty clear to me, and that's why I want in the requirements document, I want you for each requirement, or at least each top level requirement, to give me an estimate on how long you think it's going to take, how long it's going to take you, because usually I'm pretty good at looking at something and determining whether you're overestimating time or underestimating time. Somebody might say, well, this is going to take 50 hours, and I look at it and say, that's only going to take 5. And then something else you might say, well, this is going to take 10 hours, and I know it's going to take 30. So those are areas where we have to then, mess with those numbers to make sure we're in the end in that 300-ish final number, but based on reality, not based on, hey, you threw a number next to it because you've never done this before, so you weren't sure. That type of thing. So you're going to have to do enough research on the requirements document to, at the very least, give let's call it an educated guess at how long something should probably take you. And that's another thing you're going to have to take into consideration. asked each of you to kind of self-evaluate yourself in terms of where your skills are relative to where you perceive your skills should be as a senior coming out of the computer science department in either a CS degree or an IT degree. If you perceive that you're not where you should be, well, then your 300 hours are probably going to be more like 450. If you're way ahead of the curve, well, then your 300 hours might be more like 200 hours, unless you choose to dedicate yourself and push yourself to do something even better than maybe what would be the minimum requirements for the project in here. So when I'm saying 300 hours, I'm saying 300 hours for what should be the average level of competency for somebody in this class, where you should be, right? So, I think most of us can probably look ourselves in the mirror and kind of self-assess and decide, when I compare myself to my classmates in various things, am I about average? Am I the weak link? Am I the stronger one that everybody's turning to? That should give you some sort of assessment as to where you fit on the scale. So the purpose of this project is to either drag you up to where you should be, and then hopefully for the stronger people to really challenge them to do even more. That's why every single year, if you look at some of the senior seminar projects, you typically see 2 or 3 of them that are usually very strong. That doesn't mean everybody else failed. Okay, those people maybe did something that other folks in the class maybe weren't, that was a little bit outside of their strike zone. But those, let's call them better students, challenge themselves to do something beyond maybe what was expected. Kind of makes sense? So, obviously those are A projects, but also they're not necessarily representative of what the average student coming out of the class should be producing. Make some sense? Go ahead.
Would you happen to have like an example of one of these from like last year that you throw up?
I could probably go and dig one up somewhere. I'll look right after class and try to throw something up. But the issue is going to be every single one of them is just so different. Because, I would really just approach it as it's a bulleted list that explodes your entire project out into, relative baby steps. I kind of mentioned last week, don't get so granular that it's like ridiculous. Like I'm going to type the letter S, but get granular enough where you can kind of say, okay, I need to have user authentication. So I need to be able to register. I need to be able to log in. I need to be able to change my password, stuff like that. And then maybe, when you register, maybe you say, I'm going to have them put their username, a password, confirm password, something like that. So, get kind of the highlights so that you can kind of paint by number for the thing and actually implement it at the end, as opposed to having 50 little baby steps in there where it's going to be like tedious. We're going to spend more time crossing things off the list than you will be actually implementing something. But at the same time, don't have it so small where you just say, oh, my app needs to support authentication. And just stop there. You haven't expanded the problem enough to think, well, what does that mean? Well, they have to be able to log in. They have to be able to register. They have to be able to do things related to account management, that kind of stuff. So it's that middle sweet spot that you're looking for. All right, what else? Go ahead.
Do we have optional requirements? Say we combine this is our list of 300 hours, and then just prepare if this is way under something takes way less time, have optional requirements that we can add in then.
Yeah. So
the 300 hours that we don't have to.
Yeah. So probably what you'd want to do is, at the very least, you'd want to prioritize your requirements. So maybe start off with kind of a list of requirements, what would be called an MVP, minimum viable product. So this is the minimum product that I think it would take to deliver 300 hours of stuff. Okay, so this is the plan. Okay, now, but probably also within there, prioritize those things from things that absolutely, this thing doesn't work unless these are there. And then things that are kind of on the bottom, look, these are high priority from it. It would be really nice to have these, but low priority where if this is missing, it's less destructive than this feature up here being missing. And then you can have even possible version 2 features, which is kind of what you're talking about. These are things that, hey, would be cool to have, might not fit into the scope of this project. You're not necessarily sure based on the amount of time you described up here. But if you had a pecking order, this would maybe be the very next thing you'd work on if you have available time. That makes sense? What else? How many of you are well underway on your requirements document now? Maybe the better question is, how many of you have completely procrastinated and haven't even started? Who doesn't want to raise their hand? All right, so I promise you the specifications document will be worse. So the sooner you can get jump started on that, I mean, like I said, these first 3 weeks suck. But after that, you'll be working on your project the whole semester. You'll have to manage your own time, but it'll be less of this tedious work. But now, I don't want to frame that tedious work as being unimportant. It's actually quite important. You're doing all this upfront stuff that's going to effectively create your paint by number for the rest of the semester. Okay, so this isn't just about, like you asked, how long should the document be? This isn't about making me happy. This is about setting yourself up for success for the rest of the semester. Make sense? So put the time in now, cry a little bit, whatever it takes. Get those documents created so that you can use them because they're tools for success, not just to get a grade. Does that make sense? I mean, if you turn them in and they look reasonable, you're going to do fine in them. All right, so it's not about that. Ultimately, it's about having a bunch of really strong projects and for you not to be that person when you go and see the presentations at the end where your project is just lacking so much compared to everybody else's because you didn't put the time or the effort or you procrastinated or whatever it is. Make sense? All right, anything else? Going once? Going twice? All right, I'll see everybody on Thursday. If you have anything specific about your project, I'll be around for a little bit, so feel free to come up.